Hello, my name is Jon Freeman, and I'm delighted to be your narrator for this introduction to Spiral Dynamics Integral. I'd like to start by talking about why. Why am I interested in SDI, and why might you be? My story would start 40 years ago when I was thinking about going up to university, and I decided to study philosophy and psychology because I was looking for the answers to why people think as they do, why they behave as they do, and how we might make improvements in the way that society functions. I didn't get the answers I was looking for, and it wasn't until 3 decades later that I encountered spiral dynamics and finally started to feel that I was seeing what I needed to see. That's just my personal viewpoint, of course. Other people come from different directions. Many use it as a map to navigate their inner world and their developmental journey. Said Dolabani and I have both used it to illuminate our recent economic turbulence. I have found it a great lens for parenting skills. Don Beck used it over a 15-year period supporting the South African transition from apartheid, and has also applied it in major organisations, in politics and in sports psychology, as well as working with Elza Malouf in the Middle East peace process. Marilyn Hamilton has used it in her work with how cities function. Bruce Gibb lists 20 benefits, personal, professional and intellectual, that he has gained from SDI, from organisational interventions to planning a school merger and understanding the cultures that he has travelled in. You can see his full list of benefits and many others of these references on the CHE Global website. And all of this is just a snapshot to indicate just how big and wide-ranging spiral dynamics is and where it can be applied. I see it as the equivalent for psychology and sociology of what Darwinian evolution is for biology. It is that big, and in the next hour we are going to try to give you an overview of why it is so powerful and how it will help you understand yourself, maybe recognise why some work colleagues can seem so difficult, or why your grandmother seems to get more selfish as she gets older, as well as some bigger questions like what does it take to deal with the world's current and urgent problems of ecology, climate, financial fragility and political turbulence. So what is Spiral Dynamics Integral? It's a conceptual worldview which provides answers to the many questions of how people think, why they behave as they do, and how those thought systems and behaviour systems change. Since the thought systems that are changing are also worldviews, Spiral Dynamics is a worldview of worldviews. In the presentation that follows, we will describe those worldviews as codes. The codes exist in individuals, between us in society and culture, and they show up in the ways that we act, and in the systems and structures that we create, as well as in the art, architecture, religion, politics, and culture that emerge alongside them. The codes and worldviews are intelligences that are natural capacities in each of us. They are like our genetic potential. These capacities are drawn forth in response to our experience of the world, our life conditions. The codes are our individual and collective perceptions of what are the priorities that will enable us to thrive in these conditions. As an overarching worldview, spiral dynamics is the pattern that connects, the pattern of patterns in Gregory Bateson's phrase. In Don Beck's phrase, it is the master code. It is like the Enigma machine that the British built during World War II that enabled them to decipher not just one German code, but all of their codes. Spiral Dynamics Integral offers a big context with multiple perspectives and lenses that we can use. Human evolution, human history, personal development, what is present on the planet now, what can you do with it? We will try to draw out all of these particularly in terms of what is present in our world and what transitions are in motion, and most especially, what is it that is being called for if humanity is to survive and thrive. The origins of the theory are in the work of Dr. Clare W. Graves, a professor at Union College, Schenectady. Regularly asked by his students, which theory is right, in response to his psychology lectures, he undertook intensive research, gathering data about people's responses to the question, what is it that makes a psychologically healthy human being? People change, and they change for a reason. The roots of those reasons are in our life conditions. You don't think the way that the Bushmen of the Kalahari do, not because they are fundamentally different, but because your life conditions are different. What Graves observed was a relationship between changes in life conditions and changes in human socio-psychology, underpinned by neurobiological shifts, which enabled people to adapt to those changes. You think the way that you do because of the problems that you have to solve for life to work. It is in that sense that SDI resembles Darwin's theory of how organisms change biologically to adapt to environments. And Graves used the double helix image to depict our relationships to life conditions. When we respond to one set of challenges, we create new ones, and we have to respond to those. It is what he called the never-ending quest. So we will explore the tensions and pressures which drive change. Later, after working for many years with Dr. Graves, Dr. Don Beck coined the name spiral dynamics, reflecting the double helix, providing a simple image, and he then developed the colour descriptors for the stages that we will use in this presentation. When we understand the codes and stages, there is so much that was previously hard to interpret, which now becomes intelligible. And we have a language for what already is, what might be changing naturally, emerging from the current response to life's challenges, and what we might need to do to assist healthy change, whether that be for individuals, organisations, or societies. The name Spiral Dynamics Integral also reflects the period of collaboration between Don Beck and Ken Wilber to incorporate the four-quadrant perspective from Ken Wilber's integral theory. This makes explicit some aspects of Clare Graves' presentation of human dynamics, how we view individual and collective needs and how we balance them, along with how our developing internal perspectives show up in the material world. We won't analyse every stage of spiral development in all of those aspects. We will leave that for your further exploration. When humans change, they do so for a few reasons. One is developmental. As we grow and age, we get bigger and more cognitively adept. We learn how to accomplish more complex tasks and to interact with more and more people. Our range of skills is required to increase. Another reason for change is evolutionary. Like biological evolution, later stages are more complex, just as horses are more complex than prawns. Not better, just more complex. And also, like evolution, the biggest reason for change is to adapt to external conditions. These conditions have changed in many ways, including the ones caused by our growth in numbers and our need to adapt to living progressively as hunter-gatherers, then in settled villages and towns, and lately in cities and megacities. Spiral dynamics describes how we do this, through the codes that we live by. As we will see later, it is the current stage of complexity that provides many of the challenges faced by today's humans. We will also see just what the master code has to say about the new ways of thinking that this stage is calling forth from the human collective intelligence. What we are about to describe are some stages in a continuum. They are helpful snapshots that describe what humans have seen as important what the most important aspects of living are, and how that shapes the priority codes that we pass through individually and collectively. We often describe these codes as values. Values in SDI are not simply statements of what we do or don't like. Values are the representations of those priority codes. They describe and encapsulate the adaptive intelligences that we bring forth. As we unfold the stages, you will see the dance of the individual and the collective in how humans seek balance, both psychologically and socially. The I and the we is a polarity that we have to manage. Every value starts as a positive. Every one of them has a reason for existence and is healthy, but can become unhealthy when applied to excess or when it no longer fits the life conditions. This is why the spiral is dynamic. Every stage that we describe has been part of the human evolutionary journey. Every one is present in each of us, and every one is visible in our world.
The first stage system that we refer to as Beige is simple and essential. You can picture the early humans, not far beyond animal existence, small clans of hunter-gatherers doing whatever it takes to find food, water, shelter from the elements, and protection from predators. There are very few people who live in this stage all of the time on the planet now, but if you picture newborn infants or old people who are in decline, and if you look at what happens in disaster situations, you will see that any of us, given those life conditions, operate in the Beige system. For those early humans, it meant being very attuned to their senses and their instincts and their intuition. Psychologically, Beige operates in a frame of whatever supports my existence or threatens it, and it sees reality in terms of threats and resources. Their viewpoint is immediate. Of necessity, they live in the now. The past is useful if it involves a memory of where resources might be found. Healthy Beige gets what it needs. Unhealthy Beige can go into helplessness and apathy, and you can sometimes see this in the way that accident and trauma victims may respond. Beige is obviously a precarious existence. As the numbers of humans in a territory increased, there was the potential for competition over resources. There is little possibility for humans in the Beige system to pass anything on. Increased safety involves coming together in larger numbers for collective well-being. So out of that first stage of individual survival emerges the first collective system that we call Purple. This is the stage of the early herdsmen and the first agricultural settlements. The key is safety, and it is achieved through tribal bonding. Now it is possible to develop assets, possession of livestock and dwellings, and to have information to pass on to the future. That information is in the tribal wisdom, encoded in myth and story, passed down through the generations, and it is in the people, the knowledge of the elders, who also bring forward the ancestral knowledge. This corresponds with the crawling stage of infancy, where the child bonds with parents, and they are its world. What they are, it is. Psychologically, it is in all of us, as our sense of belonging, our knowing of who our people are. Purple is also very connected to its place, its environment, and this includes a spiritual perspective, a direct relationship with the natural world, and the sense that the ancestors are a living presence within and around us. Purple shows up now not only in the places people still live in those ways, but in the bigger sense of tribe, our loyalty and belonging. Manchester United is a tribe. people living in ethnic enclaves of tribes. The relationship that people in South Africa have with Nelson Mandela is not just political. He is the elder, the chief, and the founding father. So what drives change out of purple? The health of our collective systems is in their stability. The unhealthy forms are xenophobia, hatred and paranoia around others, as well as excessive conformity and failure to respond to change. If you think of the time that comes with all toddlers, the moment when they start to see beyond their parents and look at themselves, you will recognise the point at which it is no longer enough to be part of somebody else's world. The toddler wants to experience personal identity and establish their own personhood. They invoke the magic word, no. In this image you find an aspect of the pressure that drives change from the purple tribal space. Elder wisdom is restrictive. It may no longer be right as conditions change. Perhaps there are other tribes competing in the environment, and either we fight for our power or we succumb to others. Power is at the centre of the third stage that we call red. This can be power over, but it is also power to, the heroic entry into new exploration. The infant seeks gratification. It wants what it wants and it wants it now. Infant red will tantrum. Adult red will destroy and kill in order to get what it wants. It is easy to find and observe red existence in the present day. It shows up as Afghan or Somali warlords and in dictators like Saddam and Gaddafi. It shows up in mafia gangs and bullying bosses. If you have seen The Sopranos, you know how red impulsiveness and power work in the individual. Healthy red can be heroic and assertive, finding new territories. Health in red doesn't only mean being the top dog, it is also about finding a place in the pecking order. The unhealthy form of red is impulsive, ruthless, ego-driven to excess, and causing chronic instability and continuous warfare. Red sees reality in terms of power. The prizes are to the strong, to those who will do what it takes. Power determines whether I can have what I want and gratify my desires. Power is also vested in gods, the external representations of our limits to earthly power. These are beings that we must appease and sacrifice to. The assertive individualist energy that comes with red is needed. The child must establish its independent being, its healthy sense of I, and society needs its expansive forces if humanity is not to stagnate. But red tends to become chaotic. Its destructiveness can mean that there is no legacy for the future, and its impulsiveness also lacks any sense of purpose. Leaders who rely on power are vulnerable as they age. Someone will want to seize their crown and will destroy not only them but their family and friends in order to prevent revenge. Something is needed to reintroduce stability. The young child needs boundaries and rules, and in grade school they learn the codes to live by. Society needs order and purpose if it is to expand to its next stage, embrace greater complexity, and accommodate larger numbers living in proximity. Warlords may invoke the loyalty of the tribe, and mafia bosses the sense of family so as to contain disorder, but this is not enough to bring expansion. A higher purpose is needed, and in much of history this has meant the emergence of organised religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in particular, with their written codes, their hierarchies, and their priesthoods to interpret the will of the divine. The child learns to defer gratification and develop internal discipline. The adult is rewarded for compliance and is promised a further reward in heaven. For organisations, this is the stage of being too big to operate according to the daily whims of founders. Procedures and processes are called for. Blue can replace leaders without chaos because the power has become structural, not personal. Hope has died, and it does not require mass bloodshed to put a new one in place. Armies serve states and not individuals. The blue system, the fourth stage in human emergence, also brings with it writing, science, and accountancy systems. Blue is a potent stage in human development, supporting the establishment of towns and cities, the ability to invest in infrastructure, and to turn science into engineering. It brings Roman roads and aqueducts. It brings cathedrals and palaces. It brings legislative assemblies and judicial systems. In its healthy state, it accommodates steady change. Healthy blue is orderly and effective. Its rules work and enable large undertakings. It provides people with purpose. Unhealthy blue can believe that there is only one right way. It becomes fundamentalist, fighting others and punishing internal divergence. It can be bureaucratic, process-bound, and incapable of allowing innovation. Eventually, this inflexibility and lack of space for personal creativity or entrepreneurship becomes a restrictive force that is intolerable. The natural human urge towards expansion and individual expression re-emerges. There is too much we and not enough I in the system. Something will have to give.
In describing the first four stages, we have been looking a long way back. With Beige, we maybe started over 50,000 years ago. Writing is only about 5,000 years old, and the Hebrew Bible perhaps 3,000 years. When we describe the fifth system, we are getting much closer to the present day. Orange, the new code that emerges from blue, is driven by a new layer of individuality, a resurgence of self-expression. Where the red system seeks to dominate through power, orange has a strategic quality. Orange is driven and striving, but its self-assertion is contained by the ordering systems that have been built internally. Red would kill to win. Orange will bend the rules and make deals. Orange thinking believes that it can make a difference. It is in search of better ways to do things, so the one right way of blue and the old rules are seen as restrictions. Orange also wants more for itself and craves the good things in life, not in an impulsive way, because it will work for the rewards if that is what it takes, and it measures success both by what it can create and by what it can have. This creative and strategic impulse loves to make use of the knowledge that science brings and to turn it into products. The industrial and technological revolutions are fueled by the Orange Code, which has brought huge and wide-ranging changes in standards of living. In measuring success by what it can have, Orange is acquisitive to the point of greed. It values celebrity and wealth because that is how it keeps score. In Orange, he who dies with the most toys wins. Orange arises in the teenage years. There is often red within the orange because the assertion of self comes out in both forms, but the teenager is now looking at who it will be in the world. In blue, teenagers are likely to follow their parents, to learn the family trade. In orange, the young person is looking to differentiate and explore new paths. This is mirrored in societal change as new generations pursue successive innovations, and this is reflected in the rapid pace of technological change. Everything is a challenge calling for a new strategy. The world is a material place where science has replaced superstition and religion. The world is a resource base that we use for our benefit. We don't have to look hard to see what orange is on the planet. It is everywhere around us, in our computers and internet, in our megacities, in space exploration, and in our TV culture. Healthy orange brings so much in the way of innovation and achievement, and its search to do better brings newer and better models of phones and cars year by year. The downsides of orange excess are equally visible. Orange can be greedy and exploitative, and it has brought financial instability, planet-wide destructiveness, levels of inequality and alienation of spirit, which are often more than people can tolerate. It is these pressures that bring the pressure for the next rebalance, the next compensating expression of the collective impulse. In the last century, concerns about fairness and equality in some countries brought redistributive tax systems, state pensions, and socialised medicine. Orange surpluses in wealth make these choices possible. More recently, the reaction to financial toxicity is visible in the Occupy movement. There is a spiritual aspect that responds to the alienation. As well as creating surplus wealth, Orange created spare time, allowing people not just leisure, but the space to think about what life is and who we are. Spiral dynamics exists now because psychology and sociology had been invented earlier in the century. In the sixth stage response, the green system, there is a wish to find the human bond, to know more about each other's lives. Spiritual aspects to life that were almost wiped out in Orange now re-emerge, but through the human spirit, rather than the divine. In this opening to other human beings, Green embraces diversity and is interested in the unique value of every individual. This also extends into our interactions, and Green loves to seek consensual decisions in its pursuit of caring and sharing. Connection is more important by far than hierarchy or efficiency. Green's reality is filled with people and emotions. The scientific mindsets of Orange praised objectivity and have no interest in feelings or inner experience. Reality can only be found in objective, absolute truth. Green is just the reverse. It embraces subjectivity and intersubjectivity. Reality is personal and relative. In the West, Green is all around us, even if in many places it is dominated by Orange. But there are areas of obvious Green highlights: Scandinavian countries, hippie and New Age subcultures. As Green embraces the diversity of humanity, it begins to see the earlier stages. In stages 1 to 5, although humans retain earlier capacities, the one that they mainly live in now is the one that really matters. Red rejects purple and hates the blue attempts at constraint. Blue dislikes red waywardness and disapproves of the rule-bending of Orange. Green can also strongly reject other systems, but the whole world is becoming more aware of the complexity because, as Don Beck would say, every one of the stages is turning up to express itself through sound bites on CNN. Green wants to give them all a voice. We've completed now 6 stages of the 8 stages that we're going to discuss in any detail. And at this point, it's good for us to make a couple of things clear and deal with a major transition that happens after Green. The first thing that needs to be made clear, if it's not been obvious, is that the stages we're describing are not types of people. The word stages means what it says. They're stages of development that can occur in people. They're not a hierarchy because whatever stage is right for the place that people are living in, the conditions that they're living in, that is the stage that is good for them, that is the stage that is healthy. And even in saying that people may have a particular center of gravity, they may operate primarily from one of those code stages. Every one of us has all the stages operating in us or potentially available to us at any time. And if you work in an environment where your boss is a bully, when your boss comes into the room, your red system is activated, whether you behave in a different way or whether you're conscious of it or not. All of those systems are there, they're flexing inside us, they're all there as chords rather than single notes. And where we are in ourselves may not necessarily be where the surrounding culture is, because our local life conditions may not be the overall cultural life conditions. So it can be quite a complex picture. In fact, the very nature of where we are right now, complexity is one of our big issues. In saying that something's got to give as we come out of green, there's a lot of things going on all at the same time. The complexity, the diversity of the number of systems that are operating in our visible Western world. There's the speed of change, the technology that we're dealing with, and all the aspects of modern life mean that unpredictability is one of our biggest issues, and the many problems that we've created that we discussed, particularly when we were talking about Orange, the impact on the planet and so on, those problems are now becoming very urgent to be dealt with. And on top of that, we're dealing with the fact that this multiplicity, this complexity and diversity means that our solutions can't be as linear as they were capable of being when we were operating more slowly and with just one system operating at a time. We have been able historically to have a sense of cause and effect. If I do this, that follows, and we've been able to make plans and operate our thinking on the basis that we can deal with relatively predictable situations by making choices that will sustain. What's beginning to happen now is that those linear systems are breaking down, and it's calling for something new from humanity that is non-linear. And that is what we're going to be describing. So some of that non-linearity shows up in the fact that as we were describing the late conditions of green, where everything is visible, what is being shown up, even in talking about something like spiral dynamics, is our awareness that those several stages of first tier are all operating at the same time, and that in order to create a healthy flow and a healthy way of operating on the planet, we have to actually be able to assimilate all of those systems, that we have them all operating within us with some degree of awareness, and that we value what each of them do. As we said, when we were in first tier, in one of those stages, typically our way of thinking would reject the other stages that were around us. We can't afford to do that anymore, because we need to be able to harmonize and balance all of those present systems. So that can involve some work, almost certainly will involve some work, both internally for individual personalities and externally in how the world operates, in making sure that each element in the first tier stack is operating in its healthy manifestation and not in its unhealthy manifestation, and that there is balance all the way up and across. We have to have a healthy first tier stack in order to be able to move into the next stage. What does that mean that we have to be able to do? We need to move out of the sense of polarity that can operate in all of those systems and find our ability to balance flexibly as we move. We have to move away from the fear-based thought systems and the limbic responses. We have to not live in the ancestral past and the unquestioning respect for tradition, even though we want to have a strong sense of our tribal belonging. We need to be able to operate effectively with our power and our empowerment, and we at the same time need not to be living in the fear and the dominance that goes with red. We have to rise above that and use red in a healthy way. We need our blue processes and our systems and our stability, but we can't be stuck in right and wrong rigidities, and we can't be stuck in hierarchical command and control, because we won't get out of a linear way of thinking if that's what we do. We have to move beyond the orange perception that the only thing that is happening is the material world, both in the scientific sense and in the sense of how that causes us to treat people and the planet. And we can't be stuck in the green perception that only people matter. We actually have to be able to operate blue and orange and green all alongside each other. We need to have the ability to be hierarchical when hierarchies are needed, and we need to be able to be egalitarian and to embrace diversity when that is what is needed, and we need to be able to do those things alongside one another. So everything is already changing. The rate of change is increasing. The shift that's taking place is non-linear. It's a step change, and the changes that we're talking about will affect every part of our world. All of our internal systems, all of our codes, all of our ways of thinking show up in the external systems that we create. And so the changes that are needed in order to solve the problems of our current existence will affect money, they'll affect politics, they'll affect the way we look at sex and relationships, they'll certainly affect the way we look at our organizations and our businesses. They require a shift in scientific perspective. They will draw a new view of what spirit and spirituality are, and they will show up in our culture and our communications. Claire W. Graves called the shift to second tier the momentous leap, and that is not an exaggerated phrase, not by any means. That is what we have to deal with as we talk about the next system, which is yellow. When IBM surveyed 1,500 top corporate CEOs in 2010, they found that the number one concern, expressed by approximately 2/3 of them, was unpredictability. Elsewhere there is talk of emergent systems, of fractals, tipping points, and black swans. These are the life conditions that call forth the yellow code. We have already outlined the issues of complexity, speed, and non-linearity which cause that unpredictability, and indicated the rising urgency of our need for comprehensive and sustainable solutions. It is evident from the various world summits that there is some recognition of the need to work on a global scale, even if many of those summits fall short of collaborative global solutions. While the summits are engaging these issues at a global scale, corporate CEOs experience the same phenomena in their organizations. Some of their experience of unpredictability happens in the external world of competition, resource costs, and political or economic shifts. And there is more internally, from diversity, from niche technical expertise which breaks hierarchical systems, or simply from the internal complexity of large-scale organizations which need to create the responsiveness of a rabbit in structures that often seem more like giant turtles on the sand. This is why the shift into yellow calls for such a momentous leap. In the first 6 stages that comprise first tier, humankind has been in subsistence mode. In beige, there is limited future orientation because survival is day to day. And even in orange, our ability to think about the long-term consequences of our actions show obvious deficiencies. In stage 7, we take a leap towards integration. The first tier levels do not disappear, and they don't become irrelevant because they are the platform on which our being depends. The task is not to jettison the first 6 stages, but to see them all, to mobilize them within ourselves and within society to the best possible effect. We don't cease to need blue order or orange entrepreneurialism or green caring. We need to integrate, balance, and use them all purposefully in order to solve the problems of existence that we're facing. We need the contributions of the whole spiral from the standpoint of 7th level integral viewpoints. The inadequacy of cause and effect thinking demands a new way of operating that is more agile, flexible, and immediate, even while holding long-term perspectives. So our decisions may only be short-term, and we must be willing to adjust them as necessary in the light of outcomes or new external conditions as they arise. Life now demands dynamic steering. The wind changes, and we adjust our sails. While we don't let go of first-tier values and we still need to apply them in their appropriate conditions, we do need to let go of habits and fixed conclusions that we formed whilst moving through those value systems. Because while those expressions may have served us at the time, that we can't assume that those same expressions will best serve us today. We cannot make the leap to 2nd tier, carrying cumbersome baggage from 1st tier. When we apply 1st tier values from a 2nd tier viewpoint, we must apply them fresh and in the moment, using a perspective that was unavailable to us in 1st tier. In order to respond to fractal, chaotic complexity, we must flex and flow, surfing the wave of emergence. Imagine what this shift in thinking might mean for a government, when it perceives that an existing policy needs to be radically changed because, for example, the policy is causing results that are the opposite of what it was meant to do. This is often treated as a weakness, characterized as a failure and a U-turn. This is understandable because humans like predictability. It makes us feel safe to be in the known and to be managed by people who appear to have sureness and conviction. Politicians are adept at projecting such certainty, even when we all know that they don't and can't know anything for certain. To some degree, the psychological desire is to treat our leaders like all-knowing parents or wise elders and cocoon ourselves in that safety, especially in the midst of crisis. How willing are we to take responsibility as adults, to support them and even sympathize with them in facing that challenge? We may all be about to discover the answer to that question. The same will apply at all levels of societal organization. Local life conditions may not change drastically for many people. Those who are well adapted to their red, blue, or orange life conditions may not have to change much. How can we create communications media that no longer see their success as based on scaring people with fear of the unknown? Can we step out of our addiction to being scared or angry, our relish of having our unproductive emotions stirred up? The yellow response is integrative and systemic and, above all, functional. The companies of the future and the governments of the future will need to find new blends of central control with distributed autonomy. The value of multi-stakeholder perspectives is already visible in the companies that Raj Sisodia calls firms of endearment, and in those like John Mackey's Whole Foods Market that are practicing conscious capitalism. In Mackey's view, achieving this shift will still require the old analytical intelligence, but in addition calls for emotional and spiritual intelligences and the applications of systems intelligence. The shift, as Don Beck puts it, is from live and let live to thrive and help thrive. But the shift is not just in attitude. The systemic aspect is that the new values will need to be designed into the ways that corporations work. This new level of thinking does not buy into the destructive myth that all of evolution is competitive, because it fully recognizes the equal contribution that cooperation makes to healthy ecologies. Indeed, learning how to balance collaboration and competition will become a key to yellow thriving. The corporations of the future will recognize and embrace their multiple stakeholders and multiple bottom lines. In seeing clearly the damage that humans have inflicted through the unaware aspects of orange values, yellow will apply its awareness of how much humanity is dependent on the planet, its resources, its other inhabitants, and each other for continued collective well-being. Yellow-driven thinking doesn't embrace the knee-jerk, all technological change is dangerous reactivity of unhealthy green. It cannot afford to, because some of the problems technology has created may be best solved by newer technology. But yellow will be much more cautious about what it doesn't know, and much more keen to make decisions in such a way that they can be altered if and when unintended consequences show up. When yellow values are present in our leaders, they will ensure that when decisions are taken, they build in the feedback loops that will detect those consequences early, and they will place the economic cost of that monitoring and rectification with those who are responsible, not tolerating side effects or picking up the costs in the public sector. Society will expect such accountability to be built into all commercial considerations. As individuals, we must become adults. We are no longer children or adolescents, and we are now responsible for our lives, and we cannot shift the blame to governments or other surrogates. Second tier is a leap into personal accountability. We will have to ensure that the accountability, the responsibility for who we are, is matched by empowerment to make our own choices. Autonomous decision-making will be essential because the centralized awareness cannot see everything at the periphery. Top-down command and control will become obsolete because they cannot achieve the flexibility and responsiveness that are needed. Adding to the more integrated view of what has gone before in the shift to a second-tier, non-linear and flexible response, it becomes possible to act on the basis of what we know and be less driven by what we feel emotionally. Humans expressing yellow values are more capable of stepping free of survival fears and losing the impulsiveness and greed of what has gone before, so they react less to those expressions in others. Yellow is a warm colour system, but its sense of I expands out to the whole human species in its awareness that people depend on the planetary system and on each other. The nature of our interdependence is such that our species survives together or fails together. The eighth code, Turquoise, was identified by Graves, but was barely visible in expression when he was collecting his data. It is now beginning to become more recognizable, but is still far from being strongly present individually and let alone collectively. Turquoise too is a response to the emerging second-tier life conditions. It is too early to see what specific life conditions yellow will create that require a turquoise response, but some of the issues are already present in the transition from first tier. Yellow sees and addresses the problems of orange complexity and resourcing, and it can embrace the chaos that faces it. But it sees the material problems first because it is still strongly affected by the materialist mindset. It engages with the forms and the flows. Green has been drawn into the care for nature, and in Turquoise this develops into full-scale awareness of the large-scale natural systems. The awareness goes beyond the intellectual grasp. The life of the system is felt when Turquoise is activated. Whilst Green has aspirations for spiritual connectedness, Yellow is biased towards left-brained with feelings. It is functionally oriented towards the assimilation of more and better information. In that sense, we can describe Turquoise as right-brained with data. Turquoise is holistic. Internally, it can experience itself as the Earth and feel the nature of a living system. Externally, it is seeing the Earth as if from outside, viewing that living system in its entirety. It sounds an harmonic tone to purple in the renewed direct connection with the spirit of nature. Turquoise ushers in modern shamanism. It is open to embrace the non-ordinary reality, the non-material world which orange so strongly rejects, and it reconnects spirituality with physics and biology. Turquoise is naturally intuitive and embraces humanity's instinctive capacities. It is willing to conceive that there is a mind in the all. We have not spoken so far of the proportions of each stage which are to be found in the planet's populations. Anything that we say about this is speculative and approximate, there being no way to accurately measure it. Any statements are also subject to the warning that we are only identifying the overall centre of gravity that might be attributed to populations and cultures. The other warning is that the stages, as we said early on, are snapshots on a continuum, like speaking the time as 5 past or 10 past the hour and missing out 6, 7, 8 and 9. These snapshots are useful descriptive markers, but reality is blended. If we were to put numbers on this picture, that would imply accuracy that does not exist. We are indicating rough proportions of the spectrum that applies to the whole Earth. Within that spectrum, it will be apparent that there are clear differences between the cultures of the Western world, North America and Western Europe in particular, and the huge populations across Asia and Africa. The orange code is emerging almost everywhere, but it is still the case that most people live in cultures with high densities of red and blue, and with a myriad of blends. Even while this is so, the more complex systems are highly influential. The orange code has had huge impact on the lives of billions who do not yet live through those values systems. You do not have to have orange values to be aware of Manchester United, Usain Bolt or Coca-Cola. Non-governmental organisations are espousing green values in all sorts of cultures and locations which are not yet ready to absorb them. Yellow and turquoise may be strong in very small but growing numbers of people, yet this small group will increasingly influence the shaping of the future. Claire Graves very clearly articulated that it is not our job to change people, that people have the right to be who they are. What is asked of those who lead and who see this human tapestry is not to change people's codes, but to assist them to be in healthy and balanced expressions of those codes, so as to provide a pathway towards more complex ways of thinking for those who wish to travel that path. It is easy to overestimate how far along the spiral we are individually and how fast others are evolving. Glimpsing a system and accepting it is not the same as living from those values. Observing the emergence of the yellow system is not the same as living from a yellow centre of gravity. Codes enter into a person's thinking and expression, or rise in the culture, some time before they reach their peak or nodal expression. Similarly, they wane gradually as the next system begins to emerge. In the United Kingdom, for example, many aspects of the blue system had emerged by the time of Newton, who died in 1727, 100 years before the London police force was established. Value systems and their outer manifestations do not switch on suddenly. They rise gradually, and their rise may not be smooth. Second-tier values are emerging gradually and will probably be accelerated by global communications. But even for America and Western Europe, the centre of gravity is in orange and green, with just a small percentage of yellow and above. It is helpful to have this perspective as we engage with the question of how change takes place and how spiral dynamics integral helps us to support the changes that our world is calling for. We would like to close this presentation with an overview of the SDI perspective and toolkits for change. Peter Senge once said, "People don't resist change, they resist being change." You may have your own views on whether maybe they resist both, and in any event, we can talk of change quite glibly. It is easy for two people to agree that change is needed, but often that agreement will miss the real conversation. Do they mean the same thing? We need to know what we are changing from and what we are changing to. One of the reasons that change does not happen easily is that the conditions may not be right for change to occur. We need tools that will help us identify what the potential for change is, what capacities will be needed to support the change, whether those capacities are present, and how to bring them in when they are not. This is equally true for the support of personal change as it is for organizations and societies. It is also easy for those two people agreeing on change to mean quite different things about the degree of change that they want or that is called for. One may be talking of a minor adjustment, while the other wants to tear down the system and rebuild it from the ground up. Between these extremes are many identifiable variations on that theme. How do we determine which of those degrees of change will meet the functional needs of the situation? The tools for this analysis are part of the SDI equipment. Since it is at the heart of the theory that the codes change in order to solve problems presented by the life conditions, what is the relationship between our recognition that conditions are changing and the process by which we reduce the influence of the old codes and increase that of the new? And if the life conditions have only partly changed, do we need to influence those life conditions to change in order to support the new codes to stabilize? To what extent does the continued presence in systems and culture of the old conditions form a gravitational pull that undermines an intended change? The spiral lenses help us analyze and choose appropriate, healthy actions. Organizations and societies are not usually homogeneous. They are typically made up of several groups, each with their centers of gravity in different codes, or in different expressions of the same code. What does it take to support a planned change in a way that takes all of those peoples and groups forward? If you are seeking to persuade or motivate the different codes, what motivates one may demotivate another. How do we design communications, reward systems, and training processes so that they work? What types of leaders might be necessary for different kinds of teams? How do we help each individual or group to emerge into what is next for them? How much can people change at any one time? And what are the interventions that can assist the emergence of what is naturally next for people? Bear in mind that what is natural and next may be an improvement in their balance within their current code. All of these questions are capable of being addressed using the lenses and perspectives of the spiral dynamics approach. The worth of any theory is typically found in three areas. The first useful feature is that the theory should explain why things are the way they are, and help us see more clearly what is present. The second is that it should help us predict what will happen next, and prepare for what we may need to do. The third is that it assists us in choosing what we would wish to happen next, and in taking action to bringing about the best possible outcomes that we can envision. We hope that this presentation has given you a sense of the outstanding depth of explanation that SDI brings to human existence. We hope that it helps increase your recognition of what is emerging, to see what is next for you and for us all. These are second and third prizes. First prize is an appreciation of the way that SDI empowers us to take action to improve our personal and collective existence. We have only introduced the high-level perspectives of what is possible from the use of this theory. We hope that you will be inspired and encouraged to join us on the further journey into the more detailed aspects of what you might do with this knowledge and the tools that are available to assist you. On behalf of the Global Centres for Human Emergence, thank you for being with us.